to Eivind Skjellum, and he's the visionary founder of Reclaim Your Inner Throne. It's a 21st century rite of passage for men, and he is recognized as a masculinity archetype expert and on modern rites of passage. He supports men in revealing all that is hidden in service of their personal power. And we are going to talk about why nice men are dangerous as one of the topics.
Very good.
Yeah. So why are nice men dangerous, Eivind?
So we just jump in at the deep end. Yeah, right on. Let's do it. Well, I have spent the largest part of my life being nice, and it's only in recent years that it started to change. So I have a lot of personal experience. Nice men, we have a tendency, or actually, I don't think we have a choice in the matter of denying the darker side of life. The greatest amount of energy is spent by a nice man to deny that he has instincts, that he has territorialism inside of him, that he has sexuality, desire, that he has the desire to climb the hierarchy. He pretends as if all of these things are not part of his biology. He would rather that he were disconnected from hundreds of thousands of years of evolution and be the new and shining example of what it means to be a good man.
Right.
And he pretends that none of this stuff that lives, shall we say, energetically below the level of the heart, if the people tuning in understand this energy language, a lot of men, we will live from the heart up. Right. And so the tendency then for the nice man is to spend all of his days trapped in his mind, trying to figure out, to crack the code of how to be nice and good, and nurturing identities of being a good man. But in a moment where it actually matters, he crumbles, and the darkness that he hasn't been able to look at comes out of the abyss and grabs him. So the nice man is the one that in times of great challenge, he succumbs to peer pressure, he succumbs to tyranny, he can even succumb to his own lack of impulse control and just kill somebody because he has never been willing or able to actually look at the part of his being that is animal, that is savage. That's why he's so dangerous.
We're basically talking about a wolf in sheep's clothing that doesn't want to admit that it's a wolf. And because it doesn't want to admit that it's a wolf, then when it's being challenged, then the wolfness comes out in a completely uncontrollable way. Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that. I like to speak about life or our being as like a spectrum. Like think of yourself as an electromagnetic spectrum, and you have all of these different facets of your being. And I have competencies and awareness in certain facets of my being, but there are other facets where I just haven't been willing to look. And there I don't have dominion over my life. So I haven't planted the flag in that part of my life and say, I own this. This is me as well. And nice men, they have separated or exiled the whole range of emotion that is around intensity and power, and often also sexuality. And they say, this is not me. I'm a good man. But that guy over there, he's a bad man. I have to fight him. He's taking up way too much space. He must be misogynist.
Yes.
And then you have the hidden and covert game of power playing out. And so it's not like the nice man is not playing power games. It's just that he's not aware that he's playing power games. He becomes manipulative. He becomes passive aggressive. he becomes, shall we say, like the immature woman who doesn't have the power of muscle and just brawn, and so she's learned to play the social dynamics. You know, she's using the peer groups, she's using the social arena to play power games, and that's where the nice guy comes. The nice guy is happy to engage in cancel culture, for instance. You know,
you could also say the nice guy is it's a product of the womanization of any kind of education of our boys. Like when we go through kindergarten and school, and everyone, like on all levels, we are met by women pedagogues, teachers, and we don't have very many male role models to show us
exactly
that there are other aspects. And so it's all been formed by women, and the men that are actually succeed in that world as pedagogues, they also sort of have to conform to how the women view, and women are usually very uncomfortable with the boys being loud and aggressive and like being boys in the traditional sense of it. So
that seems to be the case.
Yeah. And we really need the men right now. So it's not saying like it's the niceness, like it's not, we're not saying that people shouldn't be nice to one another in this, but there's a problem here.
Yeah. I was writing a piece yesterday and today where I talk about a very similar topic of men that consider themselves good. Like, I've been nurturing an identity as a good man, but it's so easy to have that image of myself without having earned it.
Right.
Because I may be living a privileged life where there is no level of threat against me or my family. And in large part because men who were not typically nice have sacrificed a lot of things in order to make my country, my civilization be that way in the past. And here is the man thinking of himself as good, but that identity is worthless if it doesn't hold up in a moment of challenge or confrontation. And you may know the Milgram experiment.
I've heard of it, but
yeah. Well, in the United States, I don't remember when this was, but it was an experiment where a person was put next to this dial that indicated how much voltage was being passed to a person that was sat in the room next door. So the person couldn't see the other that was being hurt by electricity, but could hear them. And then there was the medical authority, the doctor in a white coat, and he was, very authoritative. And then the people who were being basically examined for their level of compliance to authority figures, they were told again and again to increase the voltage until the voltage was lethal. And 65% of the people actually killed the person in the next room because they weren't able to defy the instructions of the medical authority. And I was thinking to myself, how many of the men sitting in that chair, dialing up the electricity, had left their home that day thinking of themselves as a good man?
Yeah.
There was an authority figure that was operating fully in the dark spectrum of life. Sadism, like tyranny, like those kinds of horrible qualities. He literally instructed people to kill. And since he hadn't any sense of being good other than the identity that he had in his head, then in a moment that it mattered, he wasn't good at all. Yeah. Right? And so I think the place where we have become so naive as men is where we think that it's enough to think that I'm a good man and that makes me a good man. No, it's not good enough.
So the company in the action, there's also a little thing with that experiment where they, as I believe it was, they had also tried where there was somebody who was asking the person cranking up the dials, like, is that really a good idea? That somebody was voicing against the so-called authority figure, just like, is that really a good idea? And when somebody would stand up against the authority, it became, then they would not as often, or very less times, go to the lethal level.
Right.
To step out of it.
Yeah,
and that is the good man. That's the one that says, like, that goes up against authority and stands up for his own values.
Yeah.
It says, is this right, or this is not right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need strength of character, especially
now. And it proves that we need each other. Men really need each other right now.
And we need men.
We need men. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Where are the men?
Yeah, it's a tragedy that is even controversial to talk about the problematic development of men becoming feminized. Why is that controversial? Like, it's insane to me that is controversial. Most men naturally are masculine. Not all. I believe, for all of his flaws, I believe that David Data was pretty accurate when he was talking about like 80-20. So like 80% of men have a masculine essence, 80% of women have a feminine essence, and then there's a couple, maybe 10 that are switches, and then there's 10% of women that are genuinely more masculine, 10% of men that are genuinely more feminine, but in large part it's natural for men to be masculine. And as you were talking about, when a boy grows up in this world these days, first of all, being told that his gender is responsible for everything that's bad in the world and also in history. And he also goes through school where there's very little healthy masculine. And he may also be in a home, it could be a single parent home with just a mother, but it could also be a two-parent home where the mother is quite dominant and is basically in some kind of alliance with the son against daddy. This is incredibly common. I don't know that we speak about this so much in culture, but the alliance between son and mother to fight against daddy, it's one of the most Freudian battles that you can imagine, and it's everywhere in our culture. And so the amount of boys that actually grow up having some kind of positive message about the virtue of masculine, the virtues of the masculine, it's very low. It's very low. And then in a moment when we are in a crazy town like we are now, as you seem to allude to, then all of those men that were supposed to stand up and fight for freedom, they have been told that fighting for freedom makes you an oppressive, totalitarian tyrant.
Yeah.
Right? That's crazy.
Yeah.
If you're pro-freedom and pro-civilization and pro-democracy and all those things, you're an evil motherfucker, That's the message.
Amazing that you can be a tyrant standing up against tyranny. I mean, if you stand up against tyranny, you're a tyrant. But that makes absolutely no sense.
But that you recognize the narrative, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Like, how did we get here? It's like, what a tragedy.
So what is your answer? Like, I don't know how big a part of the audience of this follow along so far, because it's quite controversial saying all these things for some odd reason.
I never thought about it till I met you, and you said, well, men and women are different.
Yeah.
Because I've been taught that men are wrong and that we just need to teach them how to be right.
Yeah. And that's where you create dangerous men.
Yeah.
Because when you have a boy that is going into school and there is some sort of program to exorcise his dark masculinity from his system and to tell him that you could become a rapist, you could become a killer, So here's what you need to do not to become that. Those are the very people who end up killing a lot of the time, because they don't have, as I was starting out with, they don't have dominion over that spectrum.
Yes.
So they haven't become familiar. Like this, let's take an example from martial arts. Do we consider the martial artist that picks a fight all over the place as the master? Or do we consider a master the one who is just keeping his composure, he's just peaceful, doesn't need to go into the fight because he knows he would win.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to go there, he has nothing to prove. Yeah. And that makes him peaceful. And if you aren't the man who is so, in a way, expressed or so dignified in yourself that you feel really good with yourself, whether a man agrees with this or not, he has so much to prove. He doesn't feel masterful in any domain of his life, maybe. And so at any moment that there is some battle of will, some sort of ego clash, he has no choice but to be triggered into conflict every time, because he has way too much to prove. He's a white belt. He's not even a orange belt or a blue belt or a brown belt. He's a white belt, you know? And so he ends up in a conflict. And he,
that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is the answer? Like we have gone through 15 years of schooling. We come out on the other side. We are properly adjusted to the system, either willingly or chemically.
Right.
And we come out the other side, and now we are supposed to be fully functioning members of a society that is adjusted to all this. Like, so what do we do from there? I mean, it's I know there are men's groups and all of these things, but we need not re-education camps, but we need some sort of re-education. Where do we start?
I think men's groups are a great place to start, actually. There are many men's organizations by now. There are men's initiations like the one that we run in Reclaiming the Throne. So there is a growing
for teenagers too.
We don't work with teenagers, but there are those who do.
Because that would be nice to bring your son to this instead of.
I know there are rites in Denmark where you can, like, manhood rituals where you can go and do that. But
I know of at least one. I don't remember his name, who does that. I think Mankind Project is involved with some of these things, and a man in the organization that I founded is also thinking of doing this. So I think it's growing, but it's very countercultural. Yes. Although I see a massive awakening happening right now. And I would say, actually, in my experience, is that it's the women that are leading the way. And I've had a lot of mothers ask me, you know, my teenage son, he's miserable, and I love him and I want to help him, but I don't know how. Yeah. You know, and unfortunately, the way that a boy works psychologically, there's very little a mother can do for him, because the whole reason why he suffers is that he hasn't been able to sever his dependency on the feminine. Right? This was the whole purpose of rites of passage in tribal indigenous cultures. They knew that the boys had to be taken away from the bosom of the mother and be introduced into the male mysteries and learn about how to be nourished from men, how to stand with men. And if they didn't do that, they knew that that boy would cause tremendous problems for the tribe. And the Africans even have a proverb saying that if you don't initiate the young into the tribe, they will burn it down just to feel the heat. And that's because they have so much to prove.
Yeah.
They don't know that they're powerful, so they need to be somehow rebellious or aggressive or whatever to prove.
But also like the fire and the power that is in men, like when we actually tap into the masculinity, the rage, the those types of feelings, the well, anger, without having it just explode over everything, but tap into it, feel it in ourselves.
Yeah.
There's so much creative power stored in that, and if we can direct it in a positive way, it can just move mountains without ruining villages.
Exactly. It's the same in this way. I think men and women are very similar. Like our culture, our civilization, we currently look at it as misogynistic, though actually it hates both the masculine and the feminine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you polarize into a healthy expression of your own biological sex, then now you're a cultural renegade. Don't do that. Be more in the middle. Be more like the machine. Don't be so natural, right? And so we see how women are increasingly tapping into that wild woman archetype. You know, some women are doing this in a very messy way, and some women, a lot of women in my own personal circles, are doing it in a way that I'm just fucking grateful to see happening. And then it's the men. We need to do the same. We absolutely need to do the same. So it's like we need to stand looking down into the dark abyss and summon everything that lives down there, and have the demons just claw their way up the walls of the abyss until they just wash over me. And I'm saying, I'm not looking away. This is me.
Yeah.
This lives in me. And gradually I start to develop dominion over the dark side of the masculine spectrum. You know, where the savage, the killer, the whatever lives, the rapist, all of those things. Yeah, controversial, but if a man doesn't have dominion over those things, he is owned and run by those things.
Yes.
Right? And as you say, creativity, life force, vitality, all of these things open up. Vision, the desire to protect the feminine, to protect innocence, all of those things come online the moment we as men have the courage to look down into the abyss and to welcome what comes up from there.
Yeah. So exactly. So when you're looking at it, instead of turning your back to it, that's
no, can't look away.
Yeah, exactly. Because then you're going to be taken over by it. And you don't know when. No,
this was actually the background for my development into, or for my move into personal development, is that I was so repressed in my instinct in my early 20s. I tried so hard to be good that I started to kind of lose my marbles a bit, you know, because I didn't act out, but in my interiority, I was starting to think and feel things that were fucking terrifying to me. And I since realized that was merely me trying to fight my masculine emergence. And a lot of men walk around in the world thinking that the smallest flame that I feel in the center of my being is dangerous. I need to extinguish it right now, otherwise somebody's going to get burnt.
Yeah.
And they don't realize, while it is a bit of a high stakes game, you know, to really welcome the fire, because life is a school, it's a challenge, it's never going to be easy. But the invitation for a man to become actually good is to fan the flames of that fire and to say, I welcome the fire in my heart, in my belly. And I will invest my energy into learning how to be a custodian, a steward, and a responsible wielder of the masculine fire that I hold. Right? Yeah. And then you have a good man. And that's a man today that is being demonized as a very bad man. And that's how inverted our culture has become.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about what's it called, Masculinity OS or Masculine OS?
Oh, the Masculine OS. Yeah, that's just a cute name that I have given the 4 masculine archetypes: king, warrior, magician, lover. It's a system of archetypes that I've spent more than a decade immersing myself in and been innovating in that field. Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette were the originators of that particular system. And the reason why I call it the masculine OS, it's like, okay, so the hardware, we have the hardware, you know.
Yeah.
But now you need to learn how to operate it in a good way. And at least my journey, but it seems like most men's journey, is that they don't actually have a template for what healthy masculinity looks like. They don't have a map, and they don't have a single person maybe in their life who's ever sat them down to actually have this conversation. And so that was the case for me and the vast majority of the men that I know. They've never had one man sit them down to have this conversation about what healthy masculinity is. I would imagine you didn't, Mjolnir.
No, not really.
Right, there you go. And why is that? Because they don't fucking know.
Yeah.
And so they're terrified of that conversation. And fortunately, we've had some people who were interested in that conversation, and the king, warrior, magician, lover system of archetypes came out of that. So I call that the masculine OS. That you need to learn how these 4 archetypes that I actually believe are in some part built into our hardware as well. Though who knows, that we need to learn how these patterns of masculinity operate within us, and how actually, even though in moments of feeling lonely and in solitude, we men may think that what I'm feeling now is uniquely my struggle, but it never is. It never is. It's a very patterned struggle that millions of other men are experiencing at the exact same time. And the masculine operating system reveals this, you know.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked what you just saw, head on over to whoselifeisitsummit.com/podcast, where you can find full-length episodes as well as in audio format, and we do a lot of other cool stuff. You can hang out with us and other like-minded individuals who want to create a world that works for everyone, and we do that on our platform where we can chat, and we have Q&As and exclusive interviews as well. So there's so much to get over there. So come on over and play with us.